Alright. Hello, this is Kirby Master, and I'm going to be going over a basic tutorial of how to speedrun Fusion, Metroid Fusion Any percent. And I guess I'll just jump in right now. Metroid Fusion, to start off with, you see my file C right here, main deck. This is the file that you want to start with, for races, for speedrunning, for personal best attempts, anything. Because if you just start off the main deck file, you'll start immediately with the computer screen right here. Now, if you're new to Metroid Fusion, you might be wondering how do you get one of those files. Well, I'll just show you right now. This will also be a good opportunity for me to talk about a lot of the aspects of speedrunning Fusion. So, when you start with a blank file, and you start, so you have to go through a really long intro. This is a big reason why you want a main deck file, because basically nobody ever wants to sit through this really long introduction for every reset. That would just be absolutely killer. So, anyways, for anyone starting out with this game, I strongly suggest play through the game a few times casually at the very least, just to have like a better feel for controls, for like how to fight the bosses, for just to know the game math better and so on. So, I highly recommend just play through the game casually a few times, know where you're supposed to go, get a better feel for the game and so on. The second big point I want to bring out is that for 100, you want to start with any percent. Quite a few people have this misconception that 100% Metroid Fusion will be easier to speedrun than any percent. And while doing 100% casually may not be too bad, speedrunning it with a decent time is much more difficult for sure. And a big reason why 100% is much harder than any percent is because there's a lot more tricks and many more difficult tricks that if you miss any of them, you lose a lot of time. So 100% has a lot of more tricks that can potentially kill runs if you're at my level. So, also, people have this misconception that 100% is easier because the bosses will become much easier. And while that may be true on a casual perspective, in truth, the boss strategies between any percent and 100% are almost exactly the same. So, if you want to start with 100% just to clutch out on having more energy or missiles, then I hate to disappoint you, but you shouldn't be starting with that. You should be able to learn to fight bosses with fewer and fewer E-tanks, and for the most part, you should have enough missiles to fight all the bosses quickly in any percent. The only exception is Notori, the boss that gets the plasma beam. Other than Notori, all the boss strategies are basically exactly the same between any percent and 100%. So which is why I highly recommend starting with the any percent category to start with, because it's less to remember, fewer tricks, and while it may be slightly easier to die, there are a lot of energy tanks you can get that are on the way to make it easier for you. So basically start with any percent. And you should not start with 1% for very obvious reasons as well. So also, I'll also take this opportunity to talk about how to go through the text quickly with the navigation rooms. So to go to the next text box, you press A or B, or I think an arrow key should work as well. Down, I believe. So when you start a new text box, you have to let go of A and press A again and hold it until the text box is finished. Then press A twice and hold it the second time and repeat over and over again. So going through text is rather annoying. Fortunately, it doesn't really matter for in-game time, because the in-game timer only counts the time where you're actually controlling Samus for the most part. So the in-game timer does not count cutscenes, it does not count navigation rooms or text or monologues, it does not count door transitions either. It does count every moment you're controlling Samus, it does count the amount of time it takes to grab an upgrade or an expansion. And also includes the time where that takes to recharge or save, or go in your ship, and so on. Alright. So, for the most part, the in-game time is used to track personal bests for Metroid Fusion, because while technically it's not exactly the same as this game runs at 60 frames per second, and each in-game second is actually 64 frames, so it's inaccurate in a sense, but at the same time it's very consistent, so there's no reason not to use the in-game timer. Plus, I don't think anyone wants to count this right here towards your personal best times. For racing is a different story. But anyways, alright, so now that I went through the long introduction, when you reach this screen right here, this is when you want to soft reset. You can soft reset by pressing A, B, start, and select at the same time. And now you should have your main deck file right there. I highly recommend making making a copy of your main deck file, because you usually don't want to sit through that long introduction again. So that you may also notice that I have that if you do what I did, start a new file, you're not going to have that Metroid symbol on the right side. That means New Game Plus. In any percent, it doesn't really make a difference. The only advantage with the New Game Plus is that when you pause, you get to see your current in-game timer, as well as a checklist of the items you've collected. So it's very valuable for 100% to make sure you got every expansion in a certain sector, but we're not going to go over 100%. So to get a main deck file, so basically to get a New Game Plus, you just beat the game. So these two files I beat in the game with, and then you get the option to start over. But if you want a 0-0 main deck with a New Game Plus symbol on it, basically you need to start with the main deck file right now and beat it in one sitting. And then thus you'll have a New Game Plus, because when you beat the game, you'll have the symbol, but the game still doesn't actually save. And since, assuming you never saved if you run a main deck file without ever saving and reach the end, you'll get a New Game Plus while still at the main deck file, because you have never saved. So, anyways, that's the introduction. That's basically what you need to start with. Just this 0-0 main deck file. It's recommended you have a New Game Plus, but to do that, you probably need to learn how to do any percent anyways. As I've explained, beat the game in one sitting without saving. So, without further ado, let's just go through. As I said, this is how you scroll through the text. Hold A to go through quickly. When that text box reaches the end, press A, let go, press it again to hold it, and repeat. B works as well. You can press down, I believe, as well. You can use a combination of A, B, or down, whatever you're comfortable with. I prefer using A. I do not want to use B button because you may accidentally press B when the computer asks you, is your objective clear? And you might say no, or something like that. Alright, so I'm going to go really quickly through the basic physics of Samus. I'm going to assume that you've played the game before, but you don't know many of the advanced techniques, nor the basic physics of Samus. So, you notice, for the most part, you want to play the game without stopping. Just keep running. So a lot of the key and strategies to doing runes quickly is to kill enemies without stopping. It's also important to minimize the amount of time you spend in the air, because when I jump, you go almost twice as slower than running. Now, there's two different kinds of jumps you can do. You can do, if you just press A without pressing left or right, you'll just do a standing jump, and you can move around while doing a standing jump. If you press left or right from the ground, so if you press A while pressing left or right on the ground, you do a flip jump. Now, you can also, this is something I personally call flipping mode, where if you're in the air, if you press A while in standing mode in the air, right here, you go into flipping mode. Now, if you press this, going into flipping mode from standing mode will kill your vertical momentum, aka you start going down instantly. The opposite holds true. So if you go into if you're in flipping mode while going up, and you break out of it, you go down immediately. You'll break out of flipping mode if you shoot, press up, or press down. So, and you use the L button, of course, to aim diagonally. If you just press L, you'll aim diagonally up. So to aim diagonally down consistently, just press down while holding L, and then you'll just aim down, like that. You only have to tap down once. You don't have to hold down. I just tapped down once right here, while holding right or left, and you'll consistently aim down. This is actually a really important thing that people overlook, because there are a lot of enemies you can't kill by shooting forward, but you can only kill by aiming diagonally down like that. And as I mentioned before, you want to be able to do runes quickly without ever stopping. So that's really key. Alright, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I missed. Landing, if you can avoid it, you also want to avoid landing from jump. So like, for example, if there's two small platforms really close together, if you just fall off the top and land on the middle one, you'll land and you lose some time to run off the platform again. So like, there will be an example coming up a few rooms later, but basically you want to, if you can, you want to jump over extra platforms if you're not going to be spending much time running, because landing takes time. So, all right, I believe that's most of the physics I can go over as of now for Samus. So let's just go through the game right now. Right off the bat, And the third room coming up right here is the infinite is coming up called the infamous Chamorro Jump, and this is where you can test your wall jumping skills and really apply them. There's a lot of ways you can do this room. The most consistent way is the Chamorro Jump method. To wall jump, you have to be flipping into a wall. So I'm going right into a wall, and to wall pressing against the wall to press L, left, then A. Left, then A. You can't be at the same time. It has to be right, left, and then A really quickly. It'll take some practice because it is a little bit awkward for people who've never done wall jumping before. But hopefully it'll become instinct. You do not need to know how to wall jump to beat the game. Because Fusion is a game where there is no sequence breaking, and thus you do not need like tricks to do major sequence breaks. Wall jumping as a whole is there to improve your platforming, to enhance your platforming, to make things a few seconds faster. And ultimately, if you learn how to wall jump, you'll shave off seconds everywhere, which will turn into minutes. So it is not essential to learn how to wall jump, but if you want to have a good time, you definitely want to learn how to wall jump. So left then A. Of course, if you're going the opposite direction, you press right then A, and you can wall jump like that. So anyway, so the strategy I'm about to show is a Chamorro wall jump, which is this right here. I messed it up. Give me a sec to try it again. That. And that is one of the most consistent ways to reach the top of the room very quickly. It's also a great way for you to practice how to wall jump quickly. Like, it's a difficult chain of wall jumps to learn, and it'll take a lot of practice, but it does shave off time, and it's the very beginning of a run. So, another method that Biospark, who is the best person in the world at this game, is he wall jumps right here, I believe, and it starts wall jumping here. They're both similar, very similar, but for the most part, both methods work fine. I can show it off again really quickly. The key to wall jumping is that the bottom of so you see Samus in the flipping state. The bottom of her corner of her flipping state has to be touching your target. So if you're right here, right there on that platform, you can't wall jump. You have to be a little bit higher, right there. So you notice that I'm timing my wall jumps whenever the bottom corner of Samus's flipping animation is touching the ledge of a platform. Now, if you can't do this, don't fret. Like, this looks very intimidating. You don't have to do this. There's still pretty fast ways to climb this room without doing crazy wall jumps. So you can just, so like easier methods you can. I actually don't know how to climb this room up without wall jumps really quickly, but I'm sure there are reasonably fast ways or easy ways to do it. For example, you can probably just jump up here and jump around like that. Or something. There's a lot of ways you can climb this room. Feel free to improvise if you don't want to do it with Chamorro wall jumps. Alright. One more thing about Samus's physics that I forgot to mention. If you can, you notice that she grabs a ledge. You want to avoid grabbing ledges if you can. So like if I can reach a platform without ledge grabbing, then we want to avoid grabbing a ledge. And that actually is true for wall jumping. So if you can reach a certain height without wall jumping, don't bother wall jumping because the wall jumping animation takes time. Right, so that was a lot to go over. To grab ledges, you just have to press the direction against the ledge you want to grab. So like if I'm not pushing right, I'm not going to grab the ledge. I press right over here, and I'll grab the ledge. Alright, so that's a little bit more about Samus's physics. So that was a bit of a fail. Alright, so for the most part, a lot of it is just follow what I do. I'll be able to give a lot of pieces of advice on how to do, and there's a lot more to the physics of the game overall, but I'll go over them when it becomes actually possible to go over them, aka when I have Morph Ball. I'll go over like what goes on when you're morphing and such. So yeah, that guy right there takes 2 shots to kill. So you want to basically do what I did, shoot diagonal shots downward. His positioning is actually random, but if you do like a strategy, like for example what I did, you should be able to get it every time. So it should not be a big deal. Alright. So, what else? This game is very notorious for how much damage enemies do, which is why when starting out, it is a good idea to grab a lot of E-tanks when you're not quite familiar with the game yet. So for the most, then I will point out like which energy tanks you can grab that are not very expensive. And as you get better and better at the game, you can start cutting out the energy tanks that take more time to get. Personally, I get 3 energy tanks per run. I started getting only 2 now, but yeah. Alright, you also see a technique I'm doing called an unspin cancel, which is a very small optimization, but I can go over right now. So when I jump up, you notice that I land a little bit later than what I usually do. Whereas if you shoot and break her out of a flipping state, Samus goes into standing state and instantly lands, and she can start running or jumping more quickly. I don't recommend really going for it unless you're more familiar with the game, but if you want to learn it, go ahead. It's not the biggest time saver in the world, so if it messes you up a lot, I don't recommend going for it. Alright. Also, this upcoming room, a lot of people believe that wall jumping like this is faster. You're wasting a lot of time going vertically, as opposed to going like this. With the strategy I use, you're constantly moving horizontally. So you do not want to wall jump in that room. Okay. Now we're going to grab missiles soon. And yeah, there's not much else to say at this point. So right there was another unspin cancel I did. So Samus lands a few frames earlier. And now we can grab missiles. Now the missile routes, surprisingly, once you get a little bit more familiar with the game, you do not need that many missiles. You really don't. Like in this ideal any percent speedrun, 35 or 40 missiles by the end of the game is usually enough. Of course, if you're starting out, you may want to get a few more at the beginning of the game, but 1 or 2 more tanks should be more than enough. So, alright. So remember, when you press R, you can turn on when you shoot missiles, and when you press B while holding R, you shoot a missile. Straightforward. Now next up, in the next room coming up, there's a missile barrier. So you want to start shooting 3 missiles right when you enter the next room. Immediately. Right? And then you can fall down. Alright? And there's 2 strategies you can do this next part. You can either wall jump like this, or when you fall down a pit block, you can just hold left and grab the ledge and go this way. Personally, I grab the ledge now, but I don't know which one's faster, honestly, but the ledge grab has less potential to screw up, so I go for the ledge grab instead. Right, so now, right there, you want to make sure that you climb up a little bit, because if you jump up to your peak and jump immediately to wall jump, you're not going to be high enough to wall jump, so you need to climb a little bit before wall jumping right there. Alright, and fortunately the game gives you basically 2 free missile tanks right off the bat. That one and this one right here. So it's very convenient. Now what's coming up is one of the banes of Metroid Fusion speedrunning, the eye doors. Alright? It's completely random whether it shoots beams at you. So, it's completely random. The first 2 eye doors require 3 shots to kill. Every eye door after that can be killed in 1 shot. In between the moments where the eye door is vulnerable, you can shoot between 0 to 4 times. Obviously 0 is ideal, 1 is not too bad. So usually around 2 or 3, at most 3 is okay for the first 2 eye doors because you cannot kill them in 1 hit. You can only kill them in 3 hits. There's actually a technique where you can shoot 2 missiles into the eye door, but not many people use that, and it's very difficult to do so. Alright, also, you notice that every eye door gives you a red X, which is basically a refill for your missiles and health and power bombs. It's important to know, like, when do you need the red X and when do you not need it, because spawning the red X spawning takes time, so if you don't need the red X, you're better off just skipping it and saving a second or 2. In this case, of course, in this room, since you need as many missiles as you can get, you want to get the red X because the first boss coming up requires plenty of missiles. I believe roughly 15 missiles will take him out. But anyways, upcoming is the first E-Tank. Right there. Now, there's a safety E-Tank you can get here. If you want to shoot a missile, then one normal shot, and they can just go up here. And there's a second E-tank you can get. This one is one of the slightly more expensive ones, but it's not that bad either. And having more E-tanks at the beginning of the game will be very helpful for new players. The disadvantage of getting this E-tank is that you're one missile lower than usual now, which is so technically this upcoming boss is actually more difficult than 100% than any percent because you have 19. You go in with the boss with 19 missiles rather than 20. But anyways, now this boss is straightforward. You just spam missiles. Stand in front of him and spam missiles. Just spam missiles. Alright, so that was actually a perfect fight. There's a chance that this boss's name is Arachnus, and every time there's a chance that he will roll, and he's invincible when he rolls. If he rolls, you had bad luck, and he loses some time. Typically, him rolling once is pretty typical. It's not too big of a deal. If he doesn't roll at all, that's good. If he rolls twice, you had very bad luck, and you should probably reset, honestly. Anyways, so now every main boss in the game has something called a Core X, which takes a certain number of hits to kill. This one right here takes 3 hits to kill. The next one takes 4. The one for Zazabi takes 4. The one for Ceres takes 5. And all the Core X's after that take 6 hits to kill. The Core X's I'm talking about are different from the Beam Core X's. The Beam Core X's are the ones with eyes. So this one takes 3 hits to kill. If you're running low on missiles, you want to grab missiles, obviously. So I'm going to do a technique called the double missile. Right there. And you can grab Morph Ball. The double missile technique. So I just said that the Core X takes 3 hits to kill. But I just killed it in 2 hits. So what's up with that? That's because if you hit the Core X with 2 missiles on the same frame, you deal double damage in 1 round. Meaning you can cut down how many rounds it takes to kill the Core X. It's a very difficult technique to get used to, and the harder part of it is actually getting the Core X in the right position. So I'll show that off more carefully later on, but the idea is you want to lure the Core X high up, down, and you shoot 2 missiles like that. Really, really close together. Because the idea is that the Core X is a square hitbox, and you want to have it move sideways into 2 missiles you fired vertically. Another way to do double missiles is to have 2 missiles inside of it just when it spawns, which you'll hopefully see me do against the next 2 bosses coming up. Alright, so now you got Morph Ball. And you morph by pressing down twice, of course. And this is just a small optimization that you can learn about. Pay attention to the difference between this and this. See that? This and this. Oh, I messed that up. This. That's what we call an instant unmorph, which is totally not a term stolen from the Prime series. But basically, there's an animation if you just press up, where Samus has to crouch for like a little bit of extra time. Whereas if you crouch, if you unmorph, jump, and then shoot really quickly, like that, AB, while holding the direction, then Samus immediately starts moving. It's a very tiny optimization. If you can't get used to it, don't bother with it. But it is a nice optimization to learn. Anyways, oh yeah, of course to unmorph you press up. So another thing where optimization I did there is when you fall down as a Morph Ball, you bounce, and that actually loses a little time. So a tiny optimization to do is that if you're falling from a high height in Morph Ball and you need to stay in Morph Ball, it's best to unmorph and morph really quickly near the bottom again, so that you don't bounce. It's one of those tiny optimizations. But it's not really essential for a decent time. But anyways. Now, another strategy for this room coming up right here is if you just fall down normally, if you just flip jump down normally, you're going to land. And as I said before, you want to avoid landing. There's nothing you can do about that if you just flip. Like, I'll show it to you again. You can't avoid landing like that. So what you want to do is something called a jump extend. This is another part of physics for Samus that is very valuable to learn. So, every time you break out of a flip jump, you notice that Samus stays in the air for a very short time and moves horizontally for like an extra pixel or 2 and then starts falling. So by alternating A and B like that, you can gain a little bit of extra horizontal distance. It's situational, but it's very useful, especially for making pixel perfect jumps actually possible to do consistently. So basically a jump extend is just shooting out of a flip, or breaking out of a flip. Shooting is usually the easiest way to do it because that means you don't have to press up or down to damage your horizontal momentum. So what I'm going to do here, how does this relate to this situation? You can do this. And you can skip landing on this right here. Again, it's another tiny optimization, but it is a good demonstration of how a jump extend makes a difference. So compare this with this. Flip, shoot, while holding right. So those are very small optimizations that you can learn. Again, these are not too big of a video, but it is recommended that you learn at least grasp the basics of these optimizations so you can get used to making them instinct, basically. Alright. Now we're gonna head to Sector 1. Now, right now I have 20 missiles max. This next missile tank is very quick to get, and I highly recommend you get it. Heck, I believe the world record grabs this missile tank as well. And this missile tank is always best to grab now, because there's no reason to delay it for later. Why? Because Sector 1, which is coming up, is very missile intensive. And if you run out of missiles before the eye door, the run is basically over. So like having that extra missile tank really helps out for Sector 1 and the long run as well. Okay, and then here's the SAX right there. Alright. There are many things I would like to talk about for Sector 1. And there is luck involved in Sector 1. As I said, there is a lot of luck involved in this game. Not even just the eye doors, but there is enemy placement and placements of like moving objects and such. Which do make a big difference in the long run. Which is unfortunate, but a lot of the key in learning how to speedrun this game is to know all the possible enemy positions, because usually enemies are in only two different spots, or two different behaviors. So you can like memorize which of the two spots it can be, and then be able to like know how to deal with both of them with certain strats. But anyways, I'm going to cut off this video here. And in the next part, I'll be going over sectors 1 through 1 and 2. 1 and 2, and hopefully 4 and 3 as well. So, thanks for watching.